5 minutes or so and go through as many questions as we can. Quick housekeeping, if you haven't, you should know the routine, but in the front there's a sign up for PDHs. Just sign that. There's no piece of paper. We'll email that to you later. With that said, we'll jump right into the presentation. I want to make sure they have as much time as possible. We've got the ingredients for a quality 100% PS&E package, and we'll get these folks started basically right now. But if, again, capture that QR code real quick if you can, and we'll turn over the presenters. Thank you, everybody.
A little shorter than Jeff. A lot shorter than Jeff. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicole Hackler, State Plans and Standards Engineer, and I'm here with Jeff Wren, who is our State Proposals and Specifications Engineer. We also have the pleasure of having Glenda Gibson with us today, who is the Deputy Director of Technical Services, and she will be speaking to you as well. We're going to talk to you a little bit about expectations for a 100% PS&E package, the downstream impacts of packages not being turned in on time or complete, and our processes behind the scenes. So why are we talking about PS&E packages? Well, there are several reasons we've been asked to speak on this topic. Over the past several years, there has been a downward trend for receiving complete packages on time. Additionally, the quality of the PS&E packages has degraded significantly, and the number of addenda, claims, supplementals, change orders, and project costs continue to rise. These three items are of great concern not only to our users. So with that in mind, here are today's topics. We will be discussing timelines for PS&E packages, contents of a 100% PS&E package, and QA/QC expectations. First, I would like to give an overview of what project turn-ins have looked like over the past couple of years. Now, these statistics should give you pause because this is not showing a success rate, but rather more of a failure rate. From January 2021 to December 2022, there were 150 projects scheduled in the STIP. Only 53% of these were submitted on time and complete. And when turned in late, 22% were still incomplete. Of the 88 projects that were checked in anticipation of advertisement, 56 of those still ended up being moved, and that's after we had gone through our entire plan checking process, which takes about 3 weeks per project. Keep in mind, we have multiple projects each month that all need to be checked in the same amount of time, whether it's 9 projects or 29 projects. So allowing a project to go through our plan checking process and then moving it afterward or moving it multiple times is an unnecessary drain on our staff and resources. Of the 150 projects anticipated during this time period, only 32 of these projects were actually let. Oh, I lost my place. Only 32 of these projects were actually let on the date they were originally scheduled in the STIP. 32 of 150. That's a 21% success rate, which is abysmal. We all know that there are projects that move due to funding issues, reprioritizations, things we can't really control, but many of these projects that were delayed were due to right-of-way, utilities, permit issues, incomplete plans, final plan reviews not being conducted. My point is many of these are preventable delays. And I made a note yesterday during the general session. Boyd mentioned that the contractors use the 12-month let list to plan their work. So radical changes made, like these, to the 12-month let list impact many people outside of just us in the department. That's impacting contractors, vendors, fabricators, subs, and so on. So we need to keep that in mind. These statistics are not just attributable to the pandemic either, because in looking at the data for 2 years prior to COVID, the statistics were just as grim. Only 22% of projects were being turned in complete and on time, but more projects were let on their originally scheduled dates then. In any event, we are still nowhere near an acceptable rate of receiving good quality projects on time and letting them according to schedule. So what does that mean to us? Well, late submittals paired with incomplete and or poor quality submittals create huge effects in our downstream processes. So let's talk a little bit more about that. We'll start at the beginning with timeline planning. Everyone knows about the project flowchart generator that's been available online for years. It's on our Connect site under Central Let Resources. You put your Let month and year in, press the button, and voila, you have an automatically generated timeline, both for regular TIP projects shown in yellow and resurfacing projects shown in blue. But in late 2021, Ron Davenport, our state contract officer, issued a memo clarifying when to use the traditional 14-week turn-in and when to use the 8-week turn-in date. And this is because too many projects were being turned in on the resurfacing schedule when they should have been turned in on the regular TIP schedule. Essentially, this meant projects on which we needed 14 weeks to prepare were being turned in a month and a half later than they should have been. And this did not leave us enough time to properly ready the projects for advertisement, nor to go before the contract time committee. And Jeff will talk a little more in detail about this later on. But to boil the memo down, if a project has a TIP number on it or is on the 12-month let list with designations such as B, I, R, U, H, E, H, I, etc., it needs to be turned in on the TIP schedule 14 weeks in advance of letting, no matter what the project description says. There is not a different timeline for smaller projects. TIP projects are designated as such for a reason, as well as the other projects on the 12-month let list, because even if they say resurfacing, maintenance, pavement rehab, and so on, these projects usually have more extensive work and also have additional items like pipe installation, grading, guardrail, ITS, etc. Again, if it has a TIP number on it or is on the 12-month let list, it needs to be turned in on the 14-week TIP schedule. Resurfacing projects are only those with the CPT designation, and they are the only ones that can be turned in on the 8-week schedule. CPT stands for Contract Pavement Treatment, and this designation is only given to non-TIP traditional resurfacing projects. So if your project does not have a CPT in the project number, it is not a resurfacing and cannot be turned in on the 8-week resurfacing schedule. So moving on to the final PS&E package turn-ins. There seems to be a lot of confusion about our lead time, and I think some of it has to do with attrition, staff turnover, lack of training, et cetera. But whatever the reason, we're here to try to help explain the process, answer your questions, and get the train back on track. So we all know now that final PS&E packages are due 14 weeks prior to let date. And we get asked a lot why we need these packages so early, so I'm hoping to answer that. We have 14 weeks with your package, right? Well, no, not really. You have to subtract 4 weeks for advertisement, and then we lose another week for the print shop because 1 week prior to ad, we have to send the plans and proposals to document management. So really, we only have 9 weeks to process the PS&E packages through 3 sections and various committees, and that's if your package is turned in on time and in good shape. First, your package comes to my group, Plan Checking, and we plan check all of the unit disciplines. Then it moves to Jeff's group, Contract Proposals, where they prepare the contract bid proposal. After that, it goes to Final Estimating. And finally, the package goes before various committees for review, such as the Contract Time Committee, Goal Setting Committee, etc. This work cannot be done simultaneously, but must occur linearly because one section depends on information from the previous section. So, as I mentioned, the final PS&E package comes to plans and standards first. Our plan checkers have about 5 days for the first check, and at that time, comments are sent back to the PEFs or the divisions. The PEFs and divisions have 5 days to address the comments and resubmit. And then our second check takes us only about 2 or 3 days, with 2 or 3 more days allowed for turn-in of corrected plans. I will say this, the second check is something we shouldn't have to do, but unfortunately, the packages have been so poor and response to our comments so lacking that we've been forced to add this step. And when projects are particularly bad, we've had to do 3 and sometimes 4 checks on a project. And trust me, our schedule does not have time built in for this. So from start to finish, a full plan check on a quality project takes approximately 3 weeks. And remembering the last slide, we really only have 9 weeks for the entire process. And now we've subtracted 3 more for plan checking. So when we turn the package over to Jeff in the contracts group, they now have 6 weeks to ready the project for advertisement. 6 weeks may seem like a long time, but remember it still has to cycle through estimating and various committees after Jeff's group. And Jeff will talk a little bit more about his timelines later on. The whole point is this. If you're late or if your package is in bad shape, that takes us additional processing time, which dramatically narrows the window we have to get the project ready for advertisement. And when we have less time to prepare, the quality of our plans and contracts will likely go down, and that in turn can escalate costs. So our hope today is that we can give you a recipe on how to break this cycle. So it occurred to me while thinking through this process that putting together a 100% PS&E package is a lot like baking a cake. First, you need quality ingredients. The better quality ingredients you start with, the better final product you'll likely get. If you use subpar materials, it's going to show at the end. Then, you want to make sure you have everything to start the process. You don't want to have to stop and run to the store to pick up something you've forgotten. That takes time. You need to have the right tools at your disposal, and you need to know how to use them. You certainly can't bake a cake without a cake pan or a mixer of some kind, right? Pay attention to detail. If you don't follow the recipe to the letter, there's no telling what you're going to end up with, but it's probably not going to be good. You need to take all of your ingredients and put them together correctly and in the right sequence. You can't go out of order, you can't skip steps, you can't omit key ingredients, and still hope to get a good cake at the end. Don't cut corners and include everything required. And finally, you need to allow your batter to bake the right amount of time. If you have too little time for the cake to bake, it's going to be underdone. It'll be a bad outcome, and no one's going to want it. Word may also get out that you're a bad cook. And you might not be hired to do another catering job. And in our parlance, that's called consultant evaluations. So you don't want your cake to be like this sad cake here. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. It's not fit for consumption. Instead, you want to create a product that is of exceptional quality, skillfully made, and something of which everyone wants a piece. Something more like this. Okay, that's a lot better, right? So let me dive into semantics just for a moment before we move on. You may have noticed that I use the term 100% PS&E package, complete PS&E package, and final PS&E package interchangeably. In my group, they're one and the same. Now, I know that some consultants don't consider it a 100% PS&E package until it's gone through our unit. But what I mean here is that a 100% final PS&E package that you're turning into us should be 100% completed just like the name implies. The intent of a 100% PS&E package is that upon your submittal, I should be able to take your package and turn around with it tomorrow and advertise. In our recipe, we talked about having everything on hand to bake your cake. I don't want half of the sugar called for in the recipe. I must have all of it at turn-in. So sending us 90% traffic control plans that are still under review is not a 100% PS&E package. I can't advertise that. Turning something in that's missing quantities, plan sheets, or other items is not a 100% complete PS&E package. So ask yourself, could I advertise tomorrow with the information I'm sending in today? If the answer is no, then your package is not 100%, and you need to go back through the processes and correct your deficiencies. Gather missing information, complete all your items, QA/QC your material before asking yourself again, can I advertise tomorrow with what I'm sending in today? If your answer is yes, then you can submit with success. So back to the all-important quality ingredients. To have everything in hand for your 100% PS&E package, you must have already sent your plans and special provisions through all senior subject matter experts for their reviews, made revisions as required by the reviewers, and received final approval from the same technical experts prior to turn-in to us. Most central projects plans should be reviewed and approved by central technical units. However, technical units and approvals can also be conducted by the divisions or a GESC who is checking PEF work and so on, depending on how your project is being administered. The plan review and approval process includes, but is not limited to, UC and UBO plans, TMP, PMP, signal plans, work zone traffic control, and I neglected to put erosion control on this list, but erosion control should also be included. The exception to this is structures whose plans, estimates, and SPs do come in on a later timeline. So I'm often asked why we can't check pieces of the project as they become available. And the reason is because a complete PS&E package made up of all plans, specifications, and estimates works together as one entity. If you think about it, there are many of the same pay items that occur across different disciplines. So if you've only given me the plans and quantities for roadway, for example, and then later give me erosion control and there is a crossover of pay items, we have to go back again and recheck the numbers against the roadway plans, the erosion control plans, and the combined estimate to make sure everything adds up correctly. It was never the intent to do multiple checks on multiple pieces of the same project at different times. That would be like giving me half the sugar called for in the recipe, then giving me a little more later, which means I have to check what I had to begin with, then add what you've given me now. I have to compare that quantity to the recipe to figure out what I'm still missing. So that is a very inefficient way to bake a cake, and it's highly subject to error. Our 3-week turnaround only allows us enough time to do a combined holistic check of the entire project at one time. Please remember, my group is not responsible for helping get your plans to 100%. They should already be there when you turn them into us. In-depth plan reviews by technical experts need to be completed long before the package is ever submitted to us. So please make sure to allow enough time for all your plans to cycle through the technical review process. Our job is then to check for discrepancies between quantities, plan sheets, pay items, SPs, etc. We try to make sure there are no missing items or things that are contradictory or confusing. We also try to ensure consistency between all pieces of the PS&E package. And our end goal is to make certain the proposal Jeff's group creates from the 100% PS&E package presents the lowest possible risk to the state, which only happens when you give us a good quality product to start with. A complete PS&E package turn-in means you must also have all estimates and quantities completed and entered into the PIC tool or AWP if you happen to be central and are inputting quantities centrally. Oops. If there is to be cost sharing on your project, the percentages need to be broken out between the entity and the state before it comes to us. And finally, a 100% complete PS&E package needs all roadway supporting documentation available. And this includes items like the 200 series letter, which we always get asked what that is. That's building and appurtenances removal, and so on. The earthwork balance card, final pavement design letter, if you have one available, the final pay item package, field inspection questions and answers, etc. You must also have all the 12-month let list requirements, which differ from project to project, and I'm talking about things like the 404, 401 permits, construction consultations, utility agreements, rail, utility right-of-way certifications, etc. Now, the 12-month let list items are not required on turn-into plan checking, but they will be required shortly after we send the package to Jeff's group for him to work on. So you need to stay on top of these, or better yet, have them already in hand at the 14-week turn-in date. More projects have been forced to delay their lettings in the past year for not having all the items on the 12-month let list than for any other reason. So not having these ingredients could seriously hamper your project. And Jeff will talk more about the importance of having these things in time for the board agenda cutoff and the subsequent schedule implications if you do not. So now we're going to take all of the ingredients, put them together correctly to create a quality cake batter, all the while paying attention to detail. This means you need to be conducting QA, QC continually throughout the entire PS&E package development. Check twice, bake once. So before you turn your package in, make sure that you're following naming conventions. Your plans must be named correctly. 100 is roadway, 200 is TMP plans, etc. Then make sure all your plans are placed in their correct folders. Only plans go in plans folders. SPs and ICTs go in the SP folder. No UC plans or structures plans should be uploaded into final plans unless you are central or have been directed by the division to do so. The only way plan checking knows that UC plans and structures plans have been reviewed and approved by central is that central is the ones who have placed them in the final plans folder. And just a reminder, your UC plan should be docu-signed at turn-in, but DocuSign is not required on any other plans at that time. All other items, such as the 200 series letter, earthwork balance cards, final pay item sheets, SOQ packages, all checklists, etc., go in roadway supporting documentation. And speaking of checklists, many people have said that updated checklists are needed to help make sure everything is correct for turn-in, but I will say this: a checklist is a good tool, but only if it's used properly. You might have a good baking tool, like a mixer, for instance, but if you don't know how to use it, if you don't know you have to put it down in the bowl and turn it on, it's not going to help your process. We get many checklists where everything has been checked off as being complete, but when we look at the packages, only half of the items have truly been done. So if checklists are not being filled out accurately, then they really don't serve much purpose. People also ask about the PDN, but the same can be said for that. The PDN schedule template shows every possible project task. There are 441 items listed in the template, and it shows that 438 of these tasks are predecessor tasks and must be completed before a package is submitted to us. The only two items that come after us are advertisement and let. So everything else is supposed to occur before the packages come to us, but people aren't following the PDN either. So it's another good tool that's not being used to its best advantage. In my opinion, checklists are neither the problem nor the solution. The PDN is neither the problem nor the solution. The key ingredient in submitting a quality 100% PS&E package is you. The commitment you have to quality, timeliness, and conformity to process is the most important ingredient in the recipe for success. So moving on, under your discipline folders, make sure you only have individual and single PDFs uploaded, nothing combined. Now, your folder should look just like this with individual plan sheets only. Regarding quantities, make sure all your disciplines are broken out in the pick tool, which is the pay items and quantities tool. You can see on this sheet that I'm using as an example, there are erosion control items, pavement markings, and roadway items broken out. And this is what your pick sheet should look like when they come to us. Additionally, if you have cost sharing, this also needs to be shown in your pick tool. You can see in this example there is cost sharing of utilities, denoted by the 0002 category. I don't know if you guys can see that. And the NPAR or non-participating designation. So let me wrap up briefly by touching on some very common recurring errors and omissions. And we see these time and again, but if you're doing QA, QC like you should, these should not be happening. QA, QC is not our job. It is yours. Number one thing, earthwork. Y'all, earthwork is rarely correct. The balance card and the earthwork logs on the cross sections hardly ever add up. And this is elementary. This is basic QA, QC. You need to compare the two and make sure everything adds up and matches. This is easy, you guys. I don't understand why it's being missed so often. Undercut excavations, missing from cross sections. Detour removal, missing from earthwork summary. If you have a detour on your project, you must also have detour removal accounted for in your earthwork summary. Don't forget that. Confusion or omission of shoulder borrow and shoulder construction. Know the difference between the two and please account for it accordingly. Another thing that is clearly not being QA/QC'd prior to turn-in are drainage summaries. The drainage summaries sheets very rarely match the plans. Now, I realize drainage summary sheets are prepared early, and I also know that these items can change wildly during design, which would account for the discrepancies. But again, you need to do one final comparison between the plans and the drainage summaries to make sure everything matches before turn-in. Pay attention to this detail. Also, make sure you have included all the needed drainage details and that they are the correct details to match what's shown in the plans. Other omissions. Temporary guardrail being shown on the TMP, but missing from the guardrail summary, and the temporary guardrail pay items missing. Temporary pavement shown on TMP, but the temporary pavement typical sections missing, and the temporary pavement pay items missing. Temporary shoring notes missing from TMP. Temporary shoring quantities per site missing from plans. And shallow undercut by station reins missing from cross sections. Again, the key ingredient in submitting a quality 100% PS&E package is you. Be thorough, be timely, and be exceptional in your PS&E preparations. So my part of the presentation is over, and we are now turning the quality batter, also known as the 100% PS&E package, over to Jeff's group, and he's going to bake the cake. So that's us. Can you guys tell? So one last thing I did want to touch on before I turn it over to Jeff is to remind you that starting with October 2023 turn-ins, which is coming up, y'all. I know it doesn't seem like it's this close, but it is. October 2023 is for January 2024 LETs. You must be using our new recipe book, also known as the 2024 Roadway Standard Drawings and Standard Specifications. These are anticipated to be available online, hopefully in June, with hard copy prints available by September. Don't forget to make these updates to your cakes. Thanks, and happy baking.
Jeff, there's about, I don't know, I can see 6 seats up here and maybe a few more if some of y'all want to come up and grab a seat. Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry.
Good afternoon, everybody. Look at this picture of Nicole and I. They're baking a cake. Nicole came up with this idea of the baking cake, and I thought it was an excellent analogy when she told me about it, about comparing proposal development with baking a cake. But once she put this picture of her and I baking the cake, it occurred to both of us at the same time how ironic it was, since her and I both are really bad cooks. No offense, Nicole. You would not want a cake that either one of us baked, trust me. Now I'm looking at it too. I would also never wear a light blue shirt, ever. So.
Sorry, Jeff.
This is my first slide for a reason, the calendar. And first of all, I don't think I need to tell people in this room that things are different now. Things are not like they were in what a 30-year-old DOT veteran like myself would call the old days. That doesn't mean things are worse. But there are challenges, and we need to work through them together. And hopefully this presentation will provide some helpful information. We don't mean this to come off as everything is bad now. These are simply issues that we are experiencing. And we want to get everyone on the same page and work through this together. This calendar is on everyone's wall in Contract Standards Development Unit. This is the reality we deal with. Hard deadlines are our life in CSDU. We are constantly juggling 3 balls, and they're all up in the air at the same time. Here's the current month. Turn-in was last Tuesday. Letting was yesterday, as many of you know. And advertisement is next Tuesday. Incidentally, my standing rule in the proposals and specifications management section is don't plan vacation the week before advertisement. Everyone needs to be in the office. So, of course, I'm at a conference today. And next month, it starts all over again, except there's no week in between letting and advertisement. They're on the same day. I will let you know now that Contract Standards and Development Unit is working on alternatives to having to meet those dates you saw. We figured if we can fold the space-time continuum and we get this wormhole thing up and running, we'll have a lot more time. But unfortunately, we're still working out the details on that. So for now, we're just going to have to go with what the calendar says. So, what goes on during this time? Why do we need the time that we do? This is a flow chart of the contract development process. As Nicole pointed out, there's 10 total weeks to advertisement, but really just 9 because 1 week is needed by the document management section. I'm not going to go through the entire chart. And this used to be on the PDN site. I don't believe it is anymore. But here's some milestones I do want to point out. First bubble, the PS&E package submittal. This bubble is the most important. We cannot begin the process until we have the complete PS&E package. And I stress complete. Going back to Nicole's analogy, we can't start baking the cake until we have all the correct ingredients. Keep in mind, this isn't one project we're talking about, just whether you're in division or a PF or whatever. This isn't one project that's going through this process. There are multiple proposals that have to be assembled during the same time period, including resurfacing packages that come in that we receive from divisions. The proposals and specifications management section, my section, has 3 dedicated proposal engineers and 1 full-time contract time engineer to process all central let projects. The contract time committee meeting, it's a big one. There's key things needed to develop the contract time. We must have a right-of-way search with any delays, UBO, the utility by others special provision with utility relocation information, permits with associated moratoria and accurate final quantities. And of course, we don't need those this 4 weeks prior to advertisement time where we have the meeting. We need these items well before the meeting date in order to develop a contract time to present to the committee. And we have to do it for all the projects in the letting. Federal PS&E package, the Federal Agreement Summary Pre-Let Report, 3 weeks prior. This has to be sent by the Final Estimates Group. John Weathersby, the state estimating engineer, his group, has to send this to the Federal Aid Project Coordinator downtown, and this, of course, is for all federal aid projects. All quantities must be correct and final before this can happen. The DBE participation goal setting meeting. To set a DBE participation goal for a project, we must have a DBE interest report. This requires the proposal engineer who's working on the project to do the first check, send the proposal package to Final Estimates where they work on the engineer's estimate and produce the DBE interest report that in turn gets sent to the individual committee members in time for them to calculate a goal in time for the goal-setting meeting. You'll notice some things marked out on that slide. My predecessor originally held this meeting when he started, the goal-setting committee meeting, 3 weeks prior to advertisement. During his tenure, after too many projects were not ready for the committee members in time, he moved it to 2 weeks prior. Late last year, I had to move it to 1 week prior due to the fact that too many projects simply weren't ready in time to have the DBE interest report prepared in time for the meeting. Not having a complete PS&E package at turn-in compresses this time that we have to properly develop the proposal and makes it difficult to complete all the necessary steps. I go back to Nicole's cake analogy again. When my group is working on the proposal, the cake is in the oven. That is not the time to decide it needs more vanilla flavoring or some more baking soda. This obviously is a 12-month let list, and I have it here for a reason. We were surprised in the last several months how many people don't refer to it, or some people are even unaware of it. Just a quick show of hands, how many people regularly refer to the 12-month let list? I'd say that's about 20%, 15 or 20%. It's a great resource. It contains a lot of project information. This shows the turn-in date for each month that your project has to be turned in by. That in yellow, that's the review date. That's the bid-add meeting, many of you may or may not be aware of, where all projects are gone over and missing items are discussed. The let list also contains many required items that Nicole mentioned earlier. Not all are necessarily required at turn-in, but they are required for advertisement. And as Nicole alluded to, not having these items caused the majority of project schedule changes. Now, the 12-month let list that we use in our office looks a little different than the one found on the website. Ours is color-coded for quick identification of what's missing on a project. Obviously, yellow and red is not what you want to see on your project. Now, this chart can be found on the NCDOT Connect Bidding and Letting website. It shows key dates, many of the dates we've already discussed. It also shows the dates for funding authorization, including the cutoff date to be included on the board agenda that Nicole touched on earlier. The items shown on the 12-month let list must be in hand by the board cutoff date in order for the project to be funded. I will point out here, as an exception, this doesn't apply to non-STIP projects such as 17 BP projects, 15 BPR, or state bridge program projects. So, what are the effects of a late or incomplete PS&E package from a proposal development standpoint? Insufficient time to assemble proposal documents. It curtails the ability to correct problems found during proposal development. It can lead to having incomplete or even no information for scheduled committee meetings. It leads to more numerous and more extensive addenda. Addenda. Addenda are a necessary part of contract development. No one can expect to produce a perfect PS&E package every time, although that should be the goal, but we live in an imperfect world. But numerous and or extensive addenda are detrimental. They take time away from developing current packages for the next advertisement. If you remember the first slide of the calendar, if you remember that calendar that I showed you, addenda issuance would be during the same time that we're preparing for letting and advertisement. Addenda shorten the time contractors had to prepare their bid and cause them to rework estimates, recontact suppliers and subcontractors, and possibly inflate bid prices. Unfortunately, the number of addenda has increased. From 2015 through 2018, for every 10 projects, there was an average of just over 5 addenda issued. From 2019 through 2022, for every 10 projects, there was an average of over 9 addenda issued. I want to point out here a salient point. When compiling this data, any administrative type addenda, such as a new wage rate comes out or a contact information for someone or a date, those were not included in this data. Only addenda where an actual quantity or plan sheet or construction-related special provision was revised or added are contained in this data. Most recently, and I say most recently because this obviously was compiled before the May letting, but the most recent we have data in here for April letting contained 8 projects and 10 addenda. What you see here, this will be a normal addendum that we would expect to issue during the course of an advertisement. The majority of addenda are standard 2-page letters, and it should be obvious why that is. A couple of plan sheets or a couple of pay items or a page in the provisions requires basically just the project information and then the revision. That would be a typical thing that you would normally expect to see. The majority of addenda do and should look just like this. But unfortunately, not only are there more addenda, but they're becoming larger and more extensive. 2015 through 2018, there were 16 addenda greater than 2 pages. 7 addenda were 4 or more pages. These addenda, the ones that are more than your standard 2 pages, these addenda averaged 3.75 pages. 2019 through 2022, the latest full year we have, there were 21 addendum greater than 2 pages. 12 addenda were 4 or more pages. And of those addenda more than 2 pages, they averaged 5.6 pages. The number of projects requiring multiple addenda has also skyrocketed. Questions from contractors about projects under advertisement are becoming increasingly numerous. This is leading to a rise in the number of projects requiring more than a single addendum. From 2015 through 2018, the same time period we used on the previous slide, 5.2% of projects advertised required more than one addendum. From 2019 through 2022, almost 21% of projects were advertised required us to send out more than one addendum. You remember the standard two-page addendum we were just talking about. When you have a large project that has an incomplete PS&E package, and it also comes in late, and there's not enough time to resolve all the issues prior to advertisement, you can end up with a situation like this. I will tell you this project was turned in 1 day shy of 2 weeks late. It then required 4 reviews, which means it was sent back 3 times after the initial review and comments were sent. In total, there were 220 comments. It was turned over to the proposal section to develop the proposal less than 4 weeks prior to advertisement. Obviously, this severely compressed the time we had to develop the proposal. This is not the kind of situation any of us want. In summary, late, incomplete PS&E packages can lead to missed or incorrect pay items, provisions, plan sheets, etc. Trying to play catch-up during the proposal development process greatly increases the possibility of errors during the advertisement. These errors give rise to addenda. Addenda should be the exception, not the rule. There's one other issue that I want to mention, one that is an effect of the increased prevalence of PS&E packages not being complete at turn-in. Recent years have seen a rise, and I didn't put it, but I should say sharp rise, in planned addendums. Otherwise known, we call in our office, advertisement through addendum. It's become increasingly common now to plan on an addendum even before turn-in. We commonly, routinely hear something like, well, when do you need the revised information in order for an addendum to be issued? This is a high-risk situation. We'll have a project under advertisement that we know is not the final version. We may also have to pull the project if revisions are not ready in time, and that isn't good for anyone. What are some ways to mitigate these issues I've talked about? Some best management practices. Be proactive. Be aware of your project issues pre-turn-in, not after the turn-in. Know what's going on with your project, all the issues, things missing, and most importantly, stay on top of them. Communicate. Please communicate. Keep the lines of communication open. When in doubt, reach out. Let us know if there's an issue, how we can work through it together. Be responsive. Contract development is a time-sensitive process. When someone from Nicole's or my groups contacts you, please be aware of the time constraints we're working under. We're not trying to be pushy or rude, but we do need things quickly for a reason. We all want an accurate, solid project proposal to advertise that contractors can give us a good, fair bid on and build a state a quality facility. Together, I have no doubt that we, as a team, we have the ability to consistently do that. Thank you for your time. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Glenda Gibson, the Deputy Director of Technical Services, and she's going to put the icing on the cake.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't know about icing on a cake, but I do know that if we don't start with a quality design, we can't finish with a quality PS&E package or quality product. So we're responsible for the quality of our work. Today, I'm going to give you a few keys to a successful quality project. Quality, as you know from yesterday's presentation, that's been on the forefront of many conversations since I've been back. And in preparation for this meeting, I reached out to all of the design units in technical services, and I said, give me your top common errors that I want to share with y'all so that if you're aware of it, then maybe, the designs will be good and these guys will come back next time, and they'll have really good numbers. So first of all, I'm gonna cover some overall concerns, and then I'm gonna give you those top concerns for roadway, hydro, geotech, and utility coordination. So overall, before you start a design, know what is in the North Carolina manuals. Based on quality discussions that I've had, I reviewed a sampling of plans and the comments that were submitted. In nearly every case, if the designs had followed the manuals, the comments would have been eliminated before they even occurred. As I stated in the opening session, our design manuals and guidance were developed from decades of fine-tuning for what is best for the state of North Carolina. Take the time to know what's in there and follow up on additional North Carolina references like complete streets policies and NCDOT policy on street and highway access to North Carolina highways, and many, many others. Schedules. Be aware of project schedules and communicate those. Be aware of those issues that affect schedules and take action early so that your project can meet those schedules. Know how the various disciplines work together so that those schedules can be maintained. For example, if your utilities have to be moved in phase 1 of the traffic control plans, make sure the right-of-way's been purchased so that they can be moved early. Coordination. Make sure you're coordinating between disciplines. No stormwater through gas lines, please. Do you have enough right-of-way for constructability on deep pipes and other things like that? Communicate. Permit issues. Pay close attention to those things that will affect your permit. Will traffic control go outside of your permanent construction limits? Will your utilities affect your construction limits? Is your project constructible within that final footprint? Ask those questions and make sure your permit is accurately reflecting all of those constraints. And then quality control. As we discussed yesterday, the designer is responsible for quality control. You may use young and inexperienced staff working on your projects. That's great. That's how they learn. But at the end of the day, they must be reviewed by a senior subject matter expert in North Carolina design, and so, because they're the ones that are ultimately responsible. We've seen a dramatic shift in the past few years with an emphasis on project delivery, and that's good. But things have been pushed through when these projects get accelerated, and this practice has brought an increased liability and risk to the department. Unfortunately, this practice may have created a false impression that schedules are flexible or that poor quality and incomplete work is the norm. Well, we have a new normal now, and we're going to start meeting our schedules, and the quality of our work will improve, because I know most of you, and I know that that is what your heart's desire is. That's what we all desire, and we can do it when we work together. Now for a few discipline-specific common issues. Follow your roadway design manuals and your NCDOT guidance. Did I say that enough? Follow it. Only refer to AASHTO and other generic guidance when the roadway design manual doesn't address an area of design or when constraints push you to another solution. Please discuss a constraint project situation with your roadway design team member or the roadway design unit when deviating from the roadway design manual, and let them help you evaluate the best path forward. Check your site distance. Once right-of-way is purchased or a wall or bridge is built that limits site distance, it's hard to remedy those situations. For example, if you have an interchange with compressed ramps and the bridge rail offsite might limit your site distance, or the bridge rail offsite might have to be increased to help improve that site distance. Be aware of that. Check that, because it's hard to put a price on mobility. And when we reduce the speed below what the road is designed for, we're losing that additional mobility. And that's what we have to do sometimes to correct unsafe situations. Review submittals for completeness. Don't just put checks on a checklist. I think Nicole said that earlier. But we are seeing that, and that shouldn't be. Please make sure everything is reviewed by that senior subject matter expert. Follow the design exception criteria. The updated roadway design manual provided revised guidance to help understand expectations. This documents and protects all of those taking on a responsibility for that project. If we're doing something that we know we can't meet because of project constraints, then, it helps to have other people in that boat with you so that, if something bad happens, then if we had to go to court, you got a lot of people in that boat with you. Okay, that's a good thing. And then complete a design decision document. And this is a document that will help, that we're asking the designers to do to provide explanations for decisions, especially when they know it falls outside of typical expectations provided in roadway design guidance. We're all facing turnover. And if we have these documents available, it'll not only help those of you that are actually producing the plans, but it'll help the design reviewer to go easier. And it documents why final designs ended up being where they are. Hydraulic design. Ensure complete and accurate field surveys. These are engineering surveys and must be accurate to determine the accurate existing bridge opening. Ensure that FEMA compliance is met. Don't rely solely on LIDAR. They're surveys. Ensure clear, concise pre- and post-analysis of outfalls. Water diversions in this state are a liability to the department, and it is a top priority to avoid them. Improve stormwater management plans. When preparing these plans, it is important to complete the descriptions of non-structural minimum measures and of minimization of water quality impacts correctly. This assists the permitting agency in making quicker decisions, which will help your schedule. There is example language on the hydraulics website to aid you in completing the plans correctly. Please go there and take a look. Thorough review of a design recommendation plan set and adequate hydroplanning assessment. Early reviews of the hydraulic engineer of the roadway and of the roadway vertical and horizontal alignment, typical sections, and super elevations are very important to ensure we aren't creating hydroplaning issues, and this will avoid rework. Hydro has developed a new tool to assist in hydroplaning analysis. Please reach out to the hydraulics unit for more information on this important tool. Geotech. Safety is number one. Equipment is showing up on job sites with inoperable or non-existent kill switches. I think we will all agree that there is nothing more important than the safety of all of our employees. Please verify the equipment is safe before it shows up on a site. Along these same lines, boreholes need to be sealed and checked after work has been completed to avoid boring cave-ins after the fact. In addition to the quality control problems and errors in interpreting or following NCDOT policies and procedures, we need to make sure that our field staff are properly trained in logging borings and cores. Field notes are often missing critical information like depths, or field staffs aren't collecting samples of poor materials so that consolidation and or triaxial testing can be done if required. In some cases, professionals don't even know how to read plans. This is critical. And one last thing on geotech is pile designs. Overestimating pile capacity due to non-continuous shell or cemented layers can result in piles too short. Or setting minimum tips of piles too deep can mean piles are longer than they're required. And lastly, utilities. Utilities have it hard. They have to. it's sometimes hard because they don't have full control of them. We have to deal with utility companies. Our relocation needs are often competing with the utility companies' own improvement projects. We have to work with the various companies that make scheduling even more difficult. One of the keys to dealing with this is excellent coordination. Know your schedules and communicate early and often. Build a relationship with your counterparts in good times so that when you have to deal with something controversial or more stressful, things get done more quickly because you have that relationship. Double check your UBA plans to ensure that they do not conflict with other aspects of your projects. Make sure you don't relocate two utilities in the same location, creating another utility conflict. Coordinators, keep your PMs informed of your progress and your struggles. Please don't wait to escalate. And PMs, reach out to your coordinators to make sure nothing has fallen through the cracks and to ensure that we are maintaining schedules. Improved awareness of policies and procedures. Get familiar with special provisions and the Utilities Accommodations Manual. Permit. Be aware that the impacts of utility relocations need to be reflected on your permits. Make sure your wetland files are turned on when you look at these utility relocation plans, and make sure that you're coordinating with the permits group. Right-of-way and constructability. Do your plans show the PUE required before it goes to right-of-way? If not, you could go to right-of-way and pay damages to a property owner and then come back for a second take and end up buying the whole property. Is your utility relocation plan constructible and in the right-of-way? Do you have a directional bore that needs more space to make sure that drill can happen? And are proposed utilities too close to existing utilities? If we miss our schedules and our let dates, as Nicole and Jeff have said, it's really hard for us to go to a utility company and have a hard conversation to hold their feet to the fire when they can turn around and say, well, why? We know your let date's going to move 6 months. Y'all, this all works together. It's really important that we all work together on the quality and our schedules so that we can have those hard conversations, so that we all rise up. So many things go into a successful project, and we can fix it. Jeff said it best. We work together and fix it. My hope today is that we raise awareness of these common errors so that you and your teams can be more successful in delivering projects. And thank y'all, and I can smile. I'm not all mean.
Great job by the presenters. We have a few minutes here for some of the Slido questions, so we'll slide into that. And I will turn it over to y'all to read through them and how you want to address them.
Can you read them?
Sure, let's do it here. Let's see. So the first one says, can the presentation slides be shared? I'm sure the answer is yes. Alternatively, is there a clear list of deliverables listed as part of the contract agreement with the contractor consultant? Yep. Yep. There is a checklist, yep.
We have checklists that we've mentioned, but again, we can't stress enough that if you're using the checklist, make sure you're really reading everything and checking them off appropriately.
Mm-hmm. The second one says, have experienced a wide range of workdays allowed, approved in our scope and fee for QC. Does the department have any plan to provide minimum QC work hours, work days for standard project types?
That's not in our.
Do you know, Linda? That's not in our wheelhouse.
What I would say is that that's a conversation between you and your PMs when you're negotiating your jobs. Mm-hmm. And I can speak from knowledge with this.
Next one says, explain further the 8 weeks advertisement versus 4 weeks, which I believe is the 14 weeks. Yep. And the relationship with project cost and use of flowchart generator.
The 8-week ad, that's determined in conversation with our office in the first floor. It's primarily the scope of the project. The earthwork plays a big part in that. The contractors need extra time on some of these projects. If it's a large large earthwork project, 1 million cubic yards or so, would go into determining whether it's an 8-week ad or not, the complexity of the project, the difficulty, and earthwork plays a big part of that. Is that the only thing on the 8-week ad?
The next one says, I have had some difficulty finding supporting documents on projects. Is the department developing more detailed guidance and procedures for identifying key documents in SharePoint for all disciplines, and what documents need to be placed in the Let Prep folder?
The only thing that should be placed in the Let Prep folder are your 100% completed plans. No 90%, no 95%, nothing under review, nothing like that. The only thing that should be placed in Let Prep are final 100% reviewed and approved completed plans. That we take specifically everything from the Let Prep folder, and that is what is advertised. So if it's not something that can be advertised, it should not be in Let Prep.
Makes sense. And just as the moderator, we are at time. I know there's a number of other questions. Like I said, we can certainly review these. We'll have copies of these later.
They
But
had the contact information, Jeff. If
Yep.
they wanted to email questions, I don't think we
do you
showed
wanna-
the last
you
slide.
can-
okay,
Click
we
on
can show
the
that
last slide.
last slide.
To have our contact information, and we can answer your questions.
Sounds great. Further questions there? We're done. Be sure to sign again the PD8 sheet outside. Next session is at 2:30. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Oh, of course he did. Ooh, thank you, Roger. Thanks, Linda. That was great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank